Welcome to today's session of Movers and Makers, our fortnightly thought leadership series. Today, we will be discussing the topic, Indian manufacturing, customer centricity for global competitiveness. My name is Gautam Dutta, and I will be the moderator for today's discussions. Today, we have an amazing panel of three captains of India's industrial machinery vertical. We would like to learn from their knowledge drawn from several years of experience of leading their respective organizations. Before we start the afternoon's proceedings, here is the format to give you an idea of what to expect. To begin with, we will take a few moments to introduce our esteemed panelists. I will then kick off the conversations, asking questions that draw out the trends, challenges, and way forward for achieving customer centricity and gain global competitiveness. And finally, in the last segment, we will give you audiences an opportunity to ask some specific questions to the panel. Please enter your question and to whom it is directed to on the chat window, and we will select a few as the time permits. Let us start with the panel introduction. I welcome Mr. Indradev Babu, Managing Director of Ucam. Success of Ucam is a story of a courageous effort by its founder, Mr. Babu. Ucam has now diversified into two verticals, Nimble Electric, manufacturers of high-performance electrical motors, and Nimble Machines for gear manufacturing. Has recognized and conferred upon him the Outstanding Entrepreneur Award in the year 2018. I also welcome Mr. T.K. Ramesh, Managing Director, Micromatic Machine Tools. Mr. Ramesh has over 38 years of experience in capital equipment marketing in domestic and international markets. Mr. Ramesh has carried Micromatic Machine Tools towards success right from its inception and now leading it to achieve further. Finally, I welcome Mrs. Mohini Kelkar, Director Sales and Marketing at Grindmaster Machines. Mrs. Kelkar is one of the earliest lady production engineers from VJTI Mumbai. Grindmaster builds specialized turnkey machines, providing total solutions for surface finishing requirements and exports worldwide. Under her leadership, Grindmaster has been awarded FIE Foundation National Award, CII National Innovation Award, and EEPC National Star Performer Award for highest exports for machine tools. Please allow me now to set the context for today's discussions. While customer centricity was always important to manufacturers, the recent changes brought about by the pandemic are persuading companies to change how they engage and serve customers. Considering the positive reports from early adopters of customer experience transformation, it is fast emerging as the key to success in the new normal. The improvements in sales conversion rates, decline in service costs, and improvement in customer satisfaction results have been phenomenal for those who adopted enterprise-wide customer experience programs. However, customer-centric transformation can be overwhelming as it drives change across every function of the organization, and hence today's panel discussion, where we would like to discuss these challenges. It is also evident from the early adopters that digitalization can be the support for customer-centric transformation. It starts with a shared vision across the organization, followed by customer requirement capture and the entire value chain from design to manufacturing focused on delivering goods and services on time, within cost, and as per customer specification. It enables cross-functional collaboration and facilitates rapid resolution of engineering decisions. It contributes towards first-time right product and defect-free manufacturing, collectively contributing to a successful product launch or delivery, as the case may be. It drives a data-driven culture of decision-making and performance tracking, inculcating shared success. So audience, are you ready to have hear our captain speak about these challenges and trends? So with this background, let me ask the first question, and the question is to all the panelists. How do we create a shared vision of customer centricity across our organizations? And with it, the question is, what are the challenges that we face to transform to a customer-centric organizational culture? So Mr. Babu, would you like to start with your views.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam, for the nice introduction and also for this question. Customer-centric organization, as you said, is definitely a daunting problem. To me, it is a relentless need for an organization to be focused on the customer. But how does this happen? This happens first by knowing the purpose. Why are we here? What are we trying to do? And where is the customer in this purpose? And if we are able to arrive at the right purpose, which is to serve the customer, and also you're able to arrive at a a goal, which is a vision that you will arrive over a period of time in the future, and how you will arrive at that, the ways of arriving at it, and the need to communicate these top down. First of all, the top leader needs to be really clear in his mind. He needs to have a very good clarity of the purpose and be able to constantly communicate down into entire to the organization, and at every opportunity he meets with anyone, and every time he is driving this purpose and vision and bringing in about an alignment. So the alignment, it's very easy for an organization to have different departments working with their own individual goals and not at cross purposes to the need of the customer, and hence becoming highly inefficient and lack of customer satisfaction or customer delight. So this is easier said than done, because it's a constant effort, and the value system that has to be demonstrated by the top leadership, and it goes down into every aspect of the organization. And the challenge is that particularly in the Indian context, we have a lot of challenges, a lot of variations, a lot of changes that keep happening, and we are all the time dealing with such problems and crises. And how do we find effective time to think through, communicate through, and set an example all the time? But there are many examples of such good organizations, and it is definitely possible. And I have my own experience of not being customer-centric, and the result that we have benefited by putting in efforts to become more and more customer-centric and aligned. So the journey has been very encouraging, very satisfying, and definitely growth. And more important is that you will find that employees in the organization will be more happier. They work in better alignment, better coordination, or they work together to meet customer needs. So this is vital for any organization, and it is challenging, but it is definitely paying, and it is a way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam.
Thank you, Mr. Babu. I think you set the stage for me to take this conversation a level higher with Mr. Ramesh and Mrs. Kelkar. The question that came to my mind while you were talking is that we agree that customization and customer-centric deliveries will become very important. That means every machine, every product that we make is different from the other. There is a portion of it, fair portion of it, which could be standard modules, but a set of it needs to get innovatively delivered in addition to what you have standard. So Mr. Ramesh, how do you see the innovative portion, the customized portion of delivery being delegated across the organization so that they all gear up? And that is what my question is, like bringing in a challenge of how do we ensure that there's an alignment, which Mr. Babu mentioned. You're muted, sir. You're muted, sir.
Sorry, am I audible now? Yep.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry about that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, like Mr. Babu just mentioned, creating the shared vision is to look at a picture that we all believe in. Now, we will not believe in the picture if we are not able to see it clearly. So that's where Babu spoke about, walking the talk and the senior leadership. Going higher, like what you just now said, I'd like to kind of, talk about this with a little example. Bringing in the customer and customizing parts of your offering. An offering, like you rightly said, can be a machine, can be parts of a machine, can be subsystems of a machine. It can also be a set of services that go along with the machine or any product that it could be. Again, from an ease of understanding perspective, we all go to buy a scooter or a car, but then how it's shown, where it's delivered, how do you finance it, what are the accessories that go on to it, what could be the different engine sizes that you could give to it. Now these vary depending upon who the customer is. So if you take our own case, we've been in this business of machinery for 35 years, and I believe one of the biggest reasons of our success has been not that we made a great machine. I mean, of course, the machine was good and it had value, all that was done, but that's just basic hygiene. You need to look at what is it that could make a difference, and this difference is different for different set of people who are consuming your product and your services. So we believe that the only reason that we've grown so fast and so much is simply because we were more receptive to listening to the customer. We were able to understand his needs and then convert them into affordable, effective solutions. Now, if this needs to be done, then it's the people, whether they are at design or whether they are at service or whether they are at manufacture. How do you expose them to their actions as perceived by a customer when the product or the service is at its actual use? So, how do you do it? Like Babu said, it's the vision and the practices, and also bringing in this concept of, that within the organization also you have customers and service providers, and exposing a wider group of people to the actual purpose of your product and your service at the ultimate customer's end, So this can be done in a planned, programmed way. I mean, we've got platforms, we've got shows, we've got exhibitions, we've got service support. We could look at warranty data, we could look at satisfaction surveys. So, and making sure that these are done with the right stakeholders and the results are interpreted by the right stakeholders. So this kind of becomes a push-pull which creates its own, because it's not a question of doing it once. It's doing, learning, redoing, applying and getting better, or changing something if it's not good enough. So it's a 360-degree kind of a methodology. So again, in simple terms, vision, cross multifunctional task forces, and making sure that you expose a big part of your manufacturing or your service to the end customer at appropriate platforms.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. I think you brought in a very significant factor, which is the organization. So while the question remains the same, Mrs. Kelkar, I just want you to also comment on what kind of organization changes you envisage when you're getting already, we have already got ready for customer-centric deliveries, but in addition, a continuous improvement. So two things that Mr. Ramesh added. One was the organization parts, which is supporting such challenges. Second, the continuous optimization and continuous improvement, so that becomes a value add to the customer. Mrs. Kelkar.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to be a panelist on this session. My company Grindmaster offers customized solutions, unlike the other standard machine tools. So the customer centricity becomes the most important thing even for our survival, because if you are building customized machines, they are kind of, we partner with the customers. We in fact tell the customer that we are not on the opposite side of the table, but we are on the same side, and we need to deeply understand what customer wants and then translate it into a solution that will satisfy his requirements. So the challenge is really much bigger, and we have devised various methods to do it. One of them is a kind of gated approach, which means that at gate level itself, our team, which is involved in executing that particular customized machine, has to understand the customer requirement entirely, from the sales person who is actually concluding the order, and the team discusses with the customer. This is called as pre-DAP discussions. And I'm happy to tell you that, when we do this with customers outside India, it is much, much deeper and far, far better. So we are also trying to, inform our Indian companies how a customized machine is ordered and what all needs to be looked into it. Because there is a difference in the way customized machine is ordered when a company from China orders it or OEM orders it, and when somebody, some Indian company orders it. So we really had to work very hard on developing the forms and formats which need to be talked about by the team with the customer, and the clarity must be brought before even we kick off the project or before we embark on certain machine designs. Then we do have multiple cross-functional teams, which monthly they meet together, and then they address the challenges, of such things. As you said, that customer cannot be a responsibility of a salesperson. It is a responsibility of the whole company, who is expected to respond to the customer from time to time. Because we are into customized machines, this becomes really very, very important. The customer centricity is the first thing, because within our company, we have a slogan, some of you must have seen: 100 minus 1 is equal to 0, not 99. And in this, the most critical part is defining that 100, because minus 1 comes afterwards. In a customized machine, you first need to define what is that 100. I mean, what is customer expecting, and what we are delivering has to absolutely match. And in a customized machine, it is really difficult. Sometimes there are issues have occurred, but with the learnings of 35 years, we have evolved a system which will, have these things in place before we really make the machine. Because otherwise, even though you have the technology, it can bomb. You need to offer the right level of technology for every customer. A machine that works with tier 2 company within India cannot be offered exactly like that to a OEM from US, auto OEM. So the requirements are so different. So it is indeed very challenging. Very often the OEMs specify the build standard, what exactly they want in the machine, and our team has to understand it completely. So there are elaborate sessions which are done. The top level persons in my company sit together with mid and down level and decipher what is involved in this customized machine. So I believe that customized solutions, even other than what we are doing, will have to be done like this. Otherwise, it will, not work out. It can lead to troubles afterwards. And I do believe that a bad sale is something which you must avoid. You may have the technology, but offering wrong things to the customer, uh, often with because of the lack of knowledge, can happen in our case in a customized machine. So we are very careful even in quoting to the customer. We have elaborate process to really find out this and then quote, and then comes the gated approach with 6 gate. It will take too much time to explain, but what it means is at every stage you check if the previous stage is properly done or not, and then go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Kelkar. I think I would like to summarize for the audiences so that we can take it a notch deeper in the next set of conversation. We spoke about how shared vision is important for the entire organization for becoming customer-centric. We also discussed how organization structure, especially you mentioned, Mrs. Kelkar, cross-functional teams, and the collaboration that requires to decipher the customer requirement. And for that, the instruments have to be so clearly developed so that we capture the customer requirement to begin with, and then the entire value chain delivers to that customer requirement correctly. And that doesn't mean only the capability of the machine, it means the specs, of course, but in time, in cost. So here comes the second conversation thread, where I would like us to help the audience understand how. Let me put some facts in front of us. Machines are becoming more complex. They are getting smarter. When they are getting smarter, it means the content of a machine like this is now comprising of different sciences, different physics. It is not just a mechanically engineered product. It has electrical controls, it has control systems, it has instrumentation, it has electronics, it has software, because we are looking at constant feedback, because we already decided that it is not just for your machine to become constantly and continuously improved, but also the usage for wherever the machine goes in terms of usage. So I have a question now. I would again maybe start with Mr. Ramesh this time. We'll change the sequence of it. And we spoke about customer requirement capture. Let me call it voice of customer, because that is something we all understand. The voice of customer needs to get captured in terms of technology specs. It needs to get captured also in terms of what kind of data you would like to confirm it with when it is progressively being made, being developed and manufactured. How do you see organizations of tomorrow, including yours, Mr. Ramesh, getting ready for this, capturing the customer requirement, voice of customer, converting it to voice of engineering, laying it out so that we can continuously in all the stages do cross-checking and confirmation with respect to the data that comes out of it. And even afterwards, when it is delivered, this data-centric approach helps you in managing the maintenance and other satisfaction issues. Mr. Ramesh, how do you see the organization of tomorrow?
Yeah, the organization of tomorrow obviously needs the voice or inputs from the customer at various different stages. And again, I'm speaking more from a capital equipment, machinery, that kind of a perspective. It's pardon me for using this. It's like an Indian marriage, So you've got to make it work, and it depends on the fathers-in-law, the aunts, the uncles, and everybody. So this is typically what happens inside an organization from a maintenance perspective, from a cost perspective, from a purchase perspective, from a user perspective. So before we get, like what Mrs. Kelkar already mentioned, The nuances could be a little different for the standards and for the special and for the cost, and how much of it is tailor-made. But being cost conscious means that if you customize everything, so that there's got to be standards, there's got to be modules, and there's got to be a methodology by which you can tweak those modules or models or whatever to get the best or as close as possible to what the customer wants. So it's like, one size does not fit all, or you're giving away value, which is again from a manufacturing perspective, and for ease of understanding, I mean, if a hotel room is $100 or 100 or 5,000 rupees, now for somebody the flat screen TV may be value, for somebody else the the mattress may be value, or for somebody else the shampoo, that's the biotic shampoo that goes in, could be a value. So what standards, what's not standards? So at the time of the solution, configuring the solution, it's about a set of people who understand how they would like to buy, how they would like to use, and if they are doing something like this, then what are the issues that they are trying to get rid of or get better of, So that helps at a pre-order and at an order stage, because even if you're just adding more machinery or equipment to increase output, people are always looking for something to do it faster, better, cheaper, or somewhere you'll have to show them. That's one type of value. The second type of value is all about cost of ownership. And I believe going ahead in future, the pressures of costing, not just from inputs, but also from geography, from nationality, So see, globalization, as we saw now, is becoming a very, very different kind of, is it regionalization, is it nationalization? We're going to come out with a mix of things. So the important aspect is understand, connect, keep getting information, and look at a methodology by which, as you get the information, is it progressively possible to deliver better value. I don't want to use the word more or less, better value as needed by the change in circumstances. While we all talk of technology, many customers talk to us about saying, just give us enough technology, appropriate technology. I don't want to pay for something that I'm not going to use. So how much is too much, and then how much is too little, and how can we look at increments? Again, thanks to software, everybody talks of version 1, version 2, version 3. Now how can that be done in hardware, and then how can that then be done in software, and where do these connects happen? So these are the kind of ways in which perhaps we'll have to look at, and that's where I believe use of better technology. So you configure a platform, you deliver portions of the platform, and then you add to the platform, and if possible you also subtract from the platform. This is the kind of configuration, even in machinery, I believe will start happening. And I also believe that it's just not going to be buying assets, it's going to be rental of assets or pay by use. So these are all some things that are very, very new in the capital equipment space. Of course, this is a very old case. I'm sure many of us here know, the example of Thermax. They were building boilers and selling boilers. Now they sell steam. Because ultimately the customer is interested in steam. He doesn't want to learn about boilers or maintain boilers or spare parts for boilers or run boilers. So how is this going to happen? And then it's going to be different for different kind of capital equipment, very different for machinery. So we are learning, we are looking ahead, but from a big picture or from a concept perspective, it's about looking at platforms, configure them for a certain life, a certain use, and a certain recycling, and then have the possibility to add, subtract, or to build in and turn off and turn on, so that people can pay by use or use as needed. And these are the kind of things that I believe need to be looked at for the organizations of the future. So I don't believe in future we'll just be delivering products. We'll be delivering products we will perhaps find a way to remain connected to those products, and we will have to support, take back, give through those products and a set of service providers. Could be ours, could be partners, could be across geographies, and I believe the technology is all getting there. I mean, the very fact that we are all sitting in different cities and are able to talk and share many such things, maybe better ways would evolve.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ramesh. In fact, your thoughts reflect our discussion charter today. I do have a last bit of discussion on this, but you just hold your thought on that. I'll come back to it. But before that, Mr. Babu, the same question with an added complexity. We are talking about, Mr. Ramesh mentioned about costing. Mrs. Kelkar mentioned about, giving the right kind of technology to the right kind of customer. It's very important that we match the two. On one side, it is time, first time right, within time. On the other is multiple experimentation that one has to do to validate the decisions that we are taking. It's a combination of your past knowledge, the organizational intellectual property, bringing that knowledge together, collaborating across cross-functional teams, Mrs. Kelkar spoke about, and then taking decisions which are validated. Because if we continue to experiment for the best decision, the product may be too late, or by the time we are ready, it will be too late for the customer to use it. How do you see how organizations like yours face that day-to-day challenge from balancing between first time right and experimentation to take the most optimal decision? Sir, you're muted, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, this is let me say that this is an ongoing journey and a very interesting journey and many lessons learned. Customization. We do build several customized products, and always my worry would be that at the time of inspection and dispatch, what surprises are we going to get? Well, we have checked everything is done, and then the customer comes, and then are we going to have surprises? So it used to be so painful. The journey has been great, and today we say that it must be a perfect smooth transition without any surprises. So one of the things that is that we always captured problems and learned from it. But moving forward, we started to worry about risk management. And, I'm talking a little bit internally first. Okay, the primary thing that, Mohini talked about, how you really understand your customer and lay down your, the requirements and cross-check to see that you are meeting the customer. But I would also go a little beyond, because many things can be laid down and certain things are, customer still expects, because we're all human beings. We have the gray sides, and customers sometimes expects a little more. Yeah. So we have built in some more processes to have a touch and feel, understand what the customer wants a little more than what things are laid down, and how we can really make him happy. So him or her happy. But coming to internal processes, that's very important. The entire organization, right now, it pays off. What you do, a customer centricity, alignment in the organization pays off now when this is built, this is being executed. So you will find the different teams, communicating with each other, working together, like cross-functional teams that we, Mohini and you mentioned. But today the data is all digital and in the cloud, and then you have teams across in different plants working together to make it happen. And also more important is how do you make it on time, because when you do customize, then you need this. So many processes have to fall in place. One is modularity. How do you have excellent proven modules that you can use as building blocks. So apart from that, what FMEA processes can you have at the designs end and at the manufacturing end? Okay, how well have your system driven in terms of drawing a quality plan, and what is it that you can expect? Where and how can you, risk management, surprises? One more thing coming up here is, how is your supply chain? Okay, we can always going on endlessly blame supply chain, but I believe that supply chain is led by us and our value system, and how we adopt a supply chain wherein we have a good partnership. When we have good partnership, you can have better results with supply chain, because one main reason for poor on-time delivery is supply chain. And so the right methodology, broader vision, better partnering with your key vendors makes a lot of difference to on-time delivery, and particularly when you have a customized product. But there is nothing, no end to it. We have journeyed a lot and benefited a lot, but we have still miles to go from my own experience. And I hope this answers your question, Mr. Gautam.
Yeah, sure. And I still believe, Mr. Babu, we would end up having few answers and many questions at the end of the session. But that is what we want. If we ask the right questions to ourselves, we will search for the right answer. And that is what the value for the audience would be, listening to you and your experiences. So Mrs. Kelkar, the same discussion, but I would just like to expand on it, saying that we spoke about cross-functional team collaborating, reusing of your knowledge, organization knowledge, so that you can reduce the time and the effort for the new product to be made for the new customer. In addition to the complexities we are adding on software, electronics, this amounts to a challenging, a stage. Mr. Babu mentioned it. In fact, Mr. Ramesh also hinted on it, that before we supply, we hope that whatever the customer asked for is being reflected and being delivered through that machine. How do you validate that in a complex scenario of cross-discipline product like a modern smart machine? How do you validate that to ensure you have your stages, which you spoke about? I would request you to go level deeper and let us share that.
Yeah, sure. In my opinion, today, what customer wants most is the complete solution. It is not only the machine, it is also the process, the tooling. At least in our area, we are not offering any standardized equipment. So it is very important to give a complete solution, and in which the process plays a very important role. I do believe even in the standard machines, the right kind of toolings and the processes need to be validated first. And indeed, we take extra efforts to tell customer who says that he knows Grindmaster and he knows that I will offer him a good machine. But I said, I will not offer you a machine until the process is clear. Because the deburring and finishing, there are indeed multiple processes. And so at Grindmaster, we have a process research lab, wherein the right process is first established for the customer. That validation becomes the most important one before even we go in deeper into offering the machine. Let me also tell you that with the global supply chain coming in, and with the pandemic and now Russia-Ukraine war, lot of global components and parts are getting into India. And the Indian companies are finding different kinds of values on those part drawings. And So again, the process becomes very important. The process of making similar part, the similar steering part for a company which we used to do earlier is not exactly the same. The part drawings of the global supply chain are different. And so we do kind of front end engineering, we have coined this term FEE, that is front end engineering, which means we do the part testing in a deeper way, not one or two parts, but 200, 300 parts are tested for the customer to first validate the process. Because I do firmly believe that unless that is confirmed by both the ends, there is no discussion further on what will be the machine and production and all. In front-end engineering, we establish not only the results, but we also point out to the customer the variations in the input. It is, unfortunately, the Indian industry is still maturing, but not as mature as our other customers outside India, particularly in the Western world. So they feel sometimes that automation is automatic and magic, and it is not. So actually, the regular input has to be within the certain limits. This is a fact. We have to educate the customer to be able to get the right output. So there, and our operation comes at the end. So we really educate the customer in terms of getting their inputs right, the input to my machine. If it is within the zone, then only he will get the output. So in our case, really, we do very in-depth discussions, which are many times educating the customers who don't even order the machine on us, but still we prefer to educate the customer rather than, leaving the things at half-baked solutions. I call it half-baked, and we never like to give a half-baked solution. So we always give a complete solution. It is never only the machine. So I wish to really highlight here the importance of process, which is sometimes is taking backseat. In this world of digitalization, everybody wants to digitalize everything. But the hardcore processes, the manufacturing processes, and the tooling and the consumables and the technology is there actually, how to produce the parts, particularly when it comes to, say, aerospace parts or a little difficult to make parts. It is very, very important to get into the depth of processes.
Thank you. I think that is a very, very significant observation made by you, that it is not just your processes, but also clarifying the customer processes, how he is going to operate and deliver his set of output from the machine that he's ordering to your organizations. Thank you, Mrs. Kelkar. So now, since we have just a time check, we have about 40 minutes left, in which we also would like to encourage our audience to ask questions. But I would come back to my favorite topic of what Mr. Ramesh already mentioned. Imagine now you have these complex products, you have all these businesses going on. What kind of business model maturity we have to achieve so that we can transform this current set of capital purchase to a servitization as a product strategy, where instead of selling a product like a machine, you're selling, like you said, steam, or selling X number of parts to be ground and an X number or Y number of parts to be manufactured, so that the total cost of ownership and the way the customer consumes that ownership is very different from the way he used to take it earlier. Mr. Ramesh, your views on what kind of maturity and transformation and views, because now you're looking at IoT centric closed loop, taking the data, because you're going to manage it, the performance, the availability factor of that machine for the customer, and you'll get paid for that kind of service per output rather than as a capital purchase.
Yeah, it's again, if you're looking at machining parts, let's say metal cutting parts, turn parts, mill parts, each part has a series of operations that need to be done, and they could kind of go over several machines. So the good part is, since all machines are getting smarter, and it is definitely possible to have intelligence built onto those machines. So perhaps access to those machines, when I say access, I mean how they're being run, what program is running, is this the right program, are the speeds and feeds correct, is the right kind of tool for that part and for that material being utilized. It is possible to define, and it is also possible to track, and let us say in the more dire consequences, it is also possible to stop. Such kind of technology is slowly available. Now comes the question of who is dependent on whom, and how do we move from dependence to interdependence, is an important aspect that we really will have to look at. And then what are these costs? Again, this is not something that is new. Let's say in computer manufacture, we've all heard of models of Dell, where it's all connected, the part suppliers are connected, so there's flow of data and each man does what he's supposed to do. Paperwork has been eliminated, purchase order has been eliminated, and everybody's looking from a common output kind of a perspective. So some amount of business maturity and some amount of linking, like what Mrs. Kelkar said. One is a solution to provide a part, second is a solution to provide a sub-assembly or something like that really needs to come for the whole system to come into the picture. Now, speaking of simple machines, say, or let's say standardized machines, turning equipment, milling equipment and things like that. First phase could really be hours of use. We could look at methodologies by which it could be tracked from setup time. Here the machine is being set, here the machine is actually producing, here the parts are being counted, and again with post-process gauging, it is possible to get inputs from gauge, and then you've got go, no go, and you've got an accepted and a non-accepted, and it is possible to count, and we could look at a methodology by which this whole thing could go. To look at it from a very, very simplistic business perspective, let's say a project cost is X to make certain turned parts, okay? We could say that instead of selling him a machine, we need a certain kind of an investment that needs to be put up, and we as machinery manufacturers could guarantee for a certain contract with certain insurances in place that it's our responsibility to make sure that a machine comes to the right site and gets installed in a particular way, and make sure that it's set in, let's say, the most optimized way for those kind of parts to be made. If a part changes, perhaps we need 24 hours, 48 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever, and there could be a methodology by which these tool setups and this work holding setup gets changed, and these things, and all these are not typically buying, selling, those kind of transactions, but rather a servitized kind of a transaction. So necessarily what this means is that you've got to kind of look at a situation like a play, for want of a better way to communicate, I'm using this example. So it's what you see happening, where does the screen drop, and what is the back end activity that happens, and on site there are certain activities that actually happen, and the people who do that need not also necessarily be of an employee of that particular person, So it could get to, now will all of this happen in 1 year? Will it happen in 2 years? Now it's all a question of what kind of parts and what kind of customers that these people are in turn providing for or serving to. So these are those outcome-based kind of activities that could come into the picture from a capital equipment perspective. Perhaps we will go out from 1 year warranty, 2 year warranty to so many hours of warranty, and the dispute of whether it's run so much, not run so much, comes from a data point which is tracked, and then we made so many good parts, we did not make so many good parts, again comes from a data point, and the machine has been designed for taking up, let's say, certain thrust force, certain radial force. Now these forces, that was there a misuse, abuse, overuse, underuse, could again come from data points. So perhaps it is in this kind of a perspective that we could say that servitization comes over the machine, and the next phase of course is going to be in real time tracking this, maybe once in an hour or once in 10 minutes or 3 times a day or whatever the case may be, with a certain amount of predictiveness that can come into the picture and kind of say, hey, look, this is what is happening, and what would be the best time to set this right, or find out why this force has gone up or this force is going down. These are some of, again, it may sound like science fiction at this point in time, but I believe we are doing some tests, we are doing some of these things are happening in our own machine shops, or more as experiments and tests and things like that. And I can also say that we've got close to about 10,000-12,000 machines hooked up at customers' ends, where of course we are not servitizing the machine, but we are kind of giving back to the customer, saying that, hey, your machine ran for 8 hours today and it has made 600 parts. Now what's your cycle time? And if we have access to that cycle time, we tell him, look, your cycle time is 1 minute a part. So at 8 hours at this efficiency, this was the number of parts it should have produced, but it has run only so many cycles. Something must be wrong. So has the machine run or not run? Is it because you don't have parts, you don't have operator? Please look into it. And many customers are beginning to appreciate and saying that it's great that we are able to get this kind of an information from you. And this can go as an SMS or a WhatsApp message or as an email. So such technologies and connectivity is already happening, and we are experimenting with things like that. So today it's servitization on top of an asset. Now servitization of an asset is something what I just spoke about, and we hope that this is what is likely to come. Another very interesting thing that we are experimenting with is, you've got something called pre-PAP. Before an order actually comes to a customer, he needs to submit samples. And typically what happens today is people come and finalize machines in anticipation of the load coming in. I'm glad to say the last 2 years as an experiment we've tried, and we've got at least about 25-30 machines that we've kept as stock, which we give out on rent. And typically the people who take these machines on rent, on a per hour basis to a minimum of 1 month or 2 months, with some costs of moving the machine and putting it on the floor and things like that. They all do it to safeguard their technology or their proprietary process parameters in case they don't want to share it with somebody. And once the PPAP is over, they give back those machines, and this kind of helps us in our machines being preferred choice when the order actually comes.
Yeah.
So
very interesting example you shared.
So these are practical things that are happening. See, the minute we say data digitization, everybody expects that it's happening only in software and Teams and Zoom, but it's beginning to come down to the shop floor too.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. So to continuing this discussion, Mrs. Kelkar, you've got global customer base, and you have many Indian customers too. How do you see this maturity of data to information to knowledge becoming a normal way of working, so that, because servitization cannot be only the supplier's responsibility. Servitization is a joint reality between the deliver, the manufacturer of machine and the user of the machine together. How do you see this maturity happening in India?
Yeah. So yes, a very good question. And being focused into the exports of machines, the digitalization was so important for us. Like all our customized machines going to Mexico, even Japan, Europe, they were all commissioned online. And it was possible only because of the digitalization. The customer could understand very easily what we are asking him to do, and such complicated machines were commissioned by local engineers together with the customer's maintenance team. In absence of foreign travel, there was no other way for us to do it, and it has little bit pushed us to do it deeper. In a way, it is a boon in disguise. The pandemic was able to do it for all of us, in fact. And so we have a lot of cloud-based systems onto our machine to capture the data from the machine and then guide the customer. Like Ramesh said, we do capture such data, and the customers, sometimes the customers in India don't prefer to share such data with us. But the customers outside India, they know the benefit of doing it, because then we can quickly find out, we can do the diagnosis, we can see what has gone wrong. We have in fact even fitted cameras inside the machine in specific areas to check if something has gone wrong somewhere. And all that was allowed to us by the customer because of this distance and because of the pandemic. Number one. Adding to this, what Ramesh said, I think tool management system, it is also adopted by many companies, but we give tool management system, which means the various parts, the wear level is defined, and the machine will give the signal in terms of beep or in terms of the messages that so and so part is worn out. Please check and please replace. Also the consumables when they come to replacement. So there are multiple aspects of tool management system which also help the customer. I also feel that these things have to be discussed in depth with the customer. What exactly should be digital, and what exactly it will benefit the customer. This has to be explained across the table, and then having the customer on board and what they would like to monitor. The digital systems are accordingly devised and designed. So in our case, we do customize those things also. Having a deep discussion with the customer. Every customer has different ideas and different levels of digitalization in his setup. So we need to again be more flexible and also customize such things. I'm talking from my company perspective, where we are offering the customized solutions.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelkar. I think that was quite significant because there will be a lot of new business models emerging. Before I go to Mr. Babu for his view on this, I want to request audience to please do go ahead and type in if you have any questions. So Mr. Babu, I would connect a comment which has been made on the chat, which says that tomorrow's customer, thank you Nagesh for giving the comment, tomorrow's customer will lease machine based on his contract with his customer. Leasing company will play a major role. So what kind of capabilities or competencies you expect the leasing companies to have who can kind of contribute to this new business model of servitization?
Yeah. Thank you. See, the servitization is basically a B2B business model. And the onus is actually, I believe that the onus is actually on the capital equipment provider in terms of how is he going to be using, your word, customer centric. finally, how will he help the customer? At the same time, making it, servitizing it. Customers needs to see value in it. He would like to pay for the customer's time, just like Ramesh had been mentioning, but he doesn't want to be responsible if the machine is down or the machine is not meeting the requirements or the machine is not operational for whatever reason. So the institution, the financial institution is giving a financial support, because a capital equipment maker is in the business of designing, manufacturing, supplying, and taking care of a capital equipment. Typically, he's not in the finance business unless he has a sister company in banking. So it's a basic, I would look at it as a partnership between a finance company and a capital goods company. And the capital goods company is the one who has to take the onus and goes to the customer and says, look, this is what it's going to cost you. This is how you're going to get your money's worth back by investing this, and this is how it will help to reach your project status. Perhaps he has a project and he wants a one-time cost, which doesn't want to have the burden of managing the machine. So the model, the innovative model of the servitization is vital. That's where the whole thing matters. So what else are you going to give in terms of frills? Are you going to give him process data for him to tell him that how efficient he is? Like Mohini said about tool management data coming in, so that he knows when to change his tool and also save cost on tool. And finally, he's making a bank for every buck he is spending. And then the capital goods companies may having enough bottom line finally. And of course, you have to keep in mind that there are three parties: the customer, the financial institution, and we, the capital goods maker. How it works out and how we're going to manage your disputes. So what you have to think ahead, what disputes can you have and how will you resolve it? So I think, upfront Ramesh talked about such a servitization model. And we have heard of so many such cases. And I think that is innovation to happen. And I personally think that in the last 5 years, India has particularly moved a lot in digital front. I mean, you go to a village, people are on social media on their phones, and everybody, it's more digital minded. And so I believe that they will be more open today, but I guess companies have to take a step forward. Initially, there will be risks, there will be losses, but you will learn from it and sustenance will happen. I believe this is a way forward to be competing. Supposing you are not able to compete in price, but you have other strengths, this could be a way for a company to specialize or let's say distinguish itself in the market and do its business. Now, I hope I clarified.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Babu. It just, to put all the views in perspective, it sounds like a very exciting time for this both for the customers as well as for the capital goods manufacturer, because of the complexity that is expected to be handled by goods produced and services delivered by you, as well as the kind of leverage customers would have when they are challenged in their businesses to make better machines or better products, whether be it household goods or automotive or whatever else it may be. I do have a question which, thank you, Mr. Ramesh, you went ahead and answered, but for the rest of the audience, I would like to take that opportunity to read that question, and maybe that could also be a good question for all of you to respond. That could be, we have about 17 minutes to the end of the session. The question is, could you please identify the kind of market that machine tool makers should focus on? Should it be exports focused? Is the Indian market attractive enough as it is believed to be? And Mr. Ramesh, would you like to, kind of answer what you have answered on the chat so that the rest of the audience also understands? It's not a very, you're muted, sir. It's a very cliched question, I know, but I think we should.
No, again, like I've answered on the, I believe it has to be global and, very simple. Let's look at something as simple as a pen or a watch or a cell phone or whatever it is. I believe with the internet, with the information, there's nothing, I mean, we are out of the Lambertas and the Vespas and the Ambassadors and the Fiats, it needs to be globally designed and it needs to be locally served, serviced, costed. So again, like I mentioned, the platform and the thought process has to be global and the execution has to be local.
Mrs. Kelkar, you've done this over the last many years. This is how you transformed. I'm aware because we have had interactions in the past.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to answer with your personal experience on this.
Yes. I truly believe that every company should have a global approach to be able to even sustain in your own markets, because it is a global village now. And finally, the economics will prevail. You can see now that whatever EVs are made in India, entirely all the components are coming from China. So, and even if Indian companies start making it, unless they have a kind of global approach, they will not be competitive and technology-wise superior. So it is very essential to have the global approach, not only to get more market, but to be able to sustain your business in the long run. When you start approaching global customers, I have seen the transformation within my company. We started our business in a garage in 1984, and in the initial, since 96 or 2000, we have been going out and reaching out to the auto OEMs worldwide and so on and so forth. But every new customer outside India has given a new dimension to our business. In fact, the systems that we developed, we learned a lot. Actually, the selecting the right customer, selecting a difficult customer in the initial stages helps you actually. So it may be you feel it difficult in the beginning, but certainly when you talk to them, you understand them, your systems, your approach gets well developed. We also observed within, when we did participate in several exhibitions outside India, that our machines, Indian machines, are aesthetically and ergonomically not as good. So all this comes when you have some global vision. You have so many improvement points. When you really want to export and go global, it automatically gives you a number of improvement points, which in turn help you in your own market as well. It helps build the organization. We learned a lot from Japanese customers who are very, very particular and meticulous on, anything is in the Excel chart. So even if I'm going to visit them in Japan, they would send a big Excel chart on the menus available for lunch. And what I'm allergic to, what I don't want to eat. I mean, they are very particular about every small thing. And when we coined this 100 - 1 = 0 as our quality policy, All these thoughts were in our mind that, a lot of detailing is required. And indeed, our customers have taught us and our company to really go in the depth of detailing. I think this is our kind of a national problem, that we are happy with 80%, 85%, and so the further each and every person needs a good amount of deep deliberation and detailing. And unless you do that, you cannot be sustainable, even for your own markets or even for low hanging fruits or easy markets, so to say. So according to me, having exports on radar, whatever happens to the Indian market, when it goes up or down or whatever, is really essential. Now the question also sees, how do you select your export market? It's very, very important. And for every company, it will be different, because you need to understand your strengths and where you can pitch in, where you have what kind of competition, where will the opportunity lie. Most certainly, there is no point in putting efforts in exports to all the countries. This will be a disaster. You need to select, focus certain countries, put your efforts and money in that, see the results, and then leverage it for another country, and so on and so forth. It has to be done very carefully. Exhibition can give you some ideas on what kind of market is there for your machines, meeting some customers and having some offers, how it goes. And then you should be taking an approach of focusing those countries. And of course, then there is a whole amount of things that you need to do for exports, like appointing the channel partners, the right channel partner, then understanding that customer well, because every country has very peculiar ways of manufacturing. A simple example is Japanese likes a machine to be very compact, very approachable, user friendly, and all that. Whereas American wants it to be large in size and nicely positioned control panel at a distance. So if I give the Japanese machine kind of a thing to an American customer, it will not work. And such elaborate working you cannot do for every country and every customer. And so that is why I say that it is necessary to shortlist and focus on certain market segments or certain customers. I think focusing on customers globally is a better idea. For example, if you say that I will be supplying to Eaton Group worldwide or ZF Group worldwide, then that gives you a better focus for the machine tools, because ZF plant, wherever it is, will have certain norms and regulations. So if, in fact, that is another advantage for machine tool companies in India, that all these global players have their shops in India. So if you have supplied your machine to them in India, through them only it becomes somewhat easy, or at least you have the reference to be able to export to those companies outside India. But believe me, ZF in India will have a different specifications on the machine as compared to ZF in Germany or ZF in Mexico, for example. So every country, the teams are different and the working is different. So for machine tool companies, it is really challenging on what kind of build standard to make. Global standard is a very generic term. But when you are really approaching these specific countries and customers, the norm in those countries is different from the norm in other countries. So you need to develop build standards, what we call in Grindmaster, we call build standard. And we have defined various build standards for various export customers and for various Indian customers. I think that will be the way forward, but
Thank you.
Export and global vision should be there in my opinion.
But you also mentioned very focus You have to have a focus on what you want to do. I would like to have a final word from Mr. Babu, because you have a great example on your CNC turntable as an example, which I'm aware of, which you started and then it became a product. And then, of course, there are a lot more transformations that have happened because of the change in technology and change in the customer needs. What would be your response to a question like this? Start from India, keep global focus, like Mrs. Kelkar said. What would be your final word on this, sir?
Basically, the question I think emanates because of the changing global scenario, wherein more protectionism is coming up, and there is a sort of a confusion if we will all move to more barriers between the countries. So I think there would be a level of barriers could come up. The barriers come up, barriers get dismantled, and so on. But it's the smartest thing to do is to be globally competitive. So if you are not, then you will be in silo. And if you are better than global standards, then you are missing opportunities. And if you are below standard today, whether you have barriers or not, digitally, the entire world is connected. So everybody knows what to expect. So Indian customer is equally competitive and expects global standards. So there is no question about being globally competitive. If you need to sustain and progress and move forward and grow, you have no choice but to become globally competitive. I mean, that is absolutely the way forward. So the issue is that in this changing scenario, wherein globally you may have issues of supply chain, how are you going to deal with it? That is the actually challenge. How are you going to meet global challenges when you have global supply chain issues? So this is where strategy would come into play, planning would come into play, partnership would come into play, and we also will hope that policymakers also would make right policies, and we will be able to sail through. But at our decision-making level, we have to benchmark, we have to target, and we have to be above global standards, work towards being above global standards.
I think you made my job easier, Mr. Babu. Actually summarized it for me with your final statements. So what I would like to, I've got 4 minutes left. I would like to summarize it with number one, thank you, Mr. Ramesh, Mr. Babu, Mrs. Kelkar, for not just taking time off from your busy schedules and being part of this conversation, but most importantly, I feel all of you did mention about the need to keep focus on the global market and make those moves within yourself, taking advantage of the local talent, local ability that we have, and continue to improve and optimize what we deliver. And it is not limited to just machine tool. I'm talking about general engineering, but most importantly, all of you were so inspiring. What one thread that I got from all three of you, sir and madam, is we have to be brave and take challenges head on, experiment with it, make smart moves, yet but not hide from it, being part of a safe, till now safe environment or business environment. So I think that is been the crux of today's conversation. Thank you for being with us, and I would thank the audience who have been with us on this event. And I'm sure whatever we have learned and discussed, we will continue this conversation. Please do continue to write to us if there are any questions, something that you would like us to seek answers for. I would continue this touch with you. Thank you very much once more, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Gautam.
Thank you,
Excellent
Mr. Gautam.
moderatorship.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
well
Thank you,
done.
sir.
Thank you
Kind
for
of
the
you.
opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.